In the world, there is this obsession with this thing called boundaries. People lose their minds when their boundaries are not acknowledged. What is a boundary? A boundary is a fictive limitation that you cling onto. And now you want to enforce this fictive limitation in reality. And the only way you can do this is by tricking or forcing people to acknowledge the existence of this limitation. And how do they acknowledge it? By acting as if that limitation is there. But because that limitation isn't there, because it's fictive, they don't feel any hinder when they don't adhere to that limitation. So how do you establish boundaries? By using violence. That is what the world is teaching you. Self-defense, that means using violence to control people. Some will say, what Rashid, what if someone is inappropriate? What is inappropriate? To say something is inappropriate means that there is an expectation. And that expectation is violated by someone not giving in to that expectation. But who told you that that expectation that you consider appropriate is really appropriate? So just because someone doesn't give in to what you expect, now you want limitations on them to feel good about yourself. And if they don't give in to those limitations, you blame them for the pain you feel on the inside. And now you want to take action against them to relieve yourself. That is what common people do. That is what setting boundaries is all about. If it's about safety, you don't need many regulations. Look, if people are using the road, there needs to be regulations on where to drive, where to park your car, and all of that. We understand that. When it comes to currency, you need to have a set of regulations for currency so that people can trade with one another and do the daily stuff. So, practical regulations are necessary in daily life. But any type of limitation that goes beyond practical functioning, I mean every limitation that does not contribute to the practical functioning and practical sanity of a population, it's narcissistic. And anyone who holds on to such expectations is performing suggestive witchcraft. I've said it. So this whole mindset of boundaries is witchcraft. Let me explain why. You talk about boundaries, setting boundaries. The fact that you need to set boundaries means they don't exist. So you want something in existence that doesn't exist just because you don't want a certain outcome. Look, if someone tries to stab you or someone tries to sexually molest you, okay, that's different. That you don't want that to happen. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about dangerous situations. But if there is no danger in a situation and people still want to limit you and they become upset when they can't limit you, that is witchcraft. Look, you can expect things from other people. You can expect people to say hi to you. You can expect people to treat you in a humane manner. So people have obligations towards you. They're not divorced from accountability nor obligations towards you. They're not. Neither are you towards them. So you can expect things from other people. And you can construct expectations. There's nothing wrong with that. But can you account for those expectations? The whole idea of setting boundaries is that you enforce a limitation that you don't want to question. That's why you scapegoat people, or you stonewall them by not communicating with them, or you punish them, so you afflict them in one way or the other, as long as they don't give in to the limitation you demand. But hold on a minute. Isn't that exactly what reprobates are doing? We call them narcissists. Coming with wills that they can't account for at our expense, and they always have the reason. Isn't it weird that when narcissists do something, we blame them, but when we do it, we have our reasons? That's not right. Look, when you are practical and constructive, you don't need fictive limitations. Fictive limitations you need when you're not practical and not constructive. When you are constructive, you know how to deal with difficult people by just not dealing with them at all. When you're practical and constructive, you don't even think about limiting others. People that cling onto this idea of boundaries, most of them, when you look at them carefully, there is something they're avoiding. There's something they don't want to face. So they don't want to face an internal conflict. And they resolve this tension temporarily over and over again by putting limitations on others. So they are limited on the inside, though, to the defective way of thinking, and now they want to limit someone else or other people to feel relieved. That is why I made a video in the past telling you never to put up with difficult people. Don't allow them to be difficult with you and to be at ease with it. Why? Because once they get used to being difficult towards you to feel relieved, it's like a drug addiction. They'll become worse and worse over time. And before you know it, they have recruited other people against you and you have a whole mob that wants to harm you. That is how it goes. So, I'm not saying we should not have practical regulations. We should. If you work at a bank, then there are certain things you're not allowed to say to outsiders. That's obvious. If you work at the police and there's an investigation going, of course there's certain data others are not allowed to have access to. I understand that. Every regulation must serve a constructive, beneficial purpose to the community. If it doesn't, that expectation is witchcraft. That expectation is only there to trap people so that others can feel relieved. And it's a very weird thing. When you make up your mind that you want to be free, others who hold on to their toxic restrictions will turn on you. They'll make sure you'll have a hard time and a hard life because they don't want you to be free. You cannot walk in the blessing of God and at the same time defending and persisting in toxic restrictions that have nothing to do with Christ. Believers ought to be constructive and practical, not self-limiting and frustrated. So, I want you to unlearn this whole concept of boundaries and to replace it with practicality and being constructive. Because once you are practical and constructive, this whole idea of boundaries will be seen for what it really is. It's witchcraft. Or was it an attempt to witchcraft? That is all it is. And often people that become bitter, people that become bitter are bitter because they hold on to anger that's triggered by their expectations not being validated. So they've built up all this tension on the inside, all this danger they've built up because they're upset that one of their expectations is not met. But if they have to explain and logically defend that expectation, they can't do it. Then they realize, oh, what am I doing? Then they need to face themselves. I don't want that. Then they want excuses. Then they tell you they have the reasons. No. There is no court. There's no courthouse anywhere in the world where you can get away with saying you have your reasons. They won't take it. They will demand you to give an account of your reasons. And they will examine your reasons. If your reasons don't add up, you need to comply with justice by repenting and forfeiting those expectations that you have. Yet, in daily life, people always want to have their reasons. Listen to what I'm saying here. Beware of people who always have their reasons. Beware of them. Because having your reasons is just an excuse for them not having to be accountable. When people talk about boundaries, they think one thing, but they're actually doing another. They think in their mind they're just protecting themselves. But what they're actually doing is they're trying to control others. If they really want to, if the whole idea of making and enforcing boundaries was about self-protection, then why are people turning on those that make life hard on them? Namely politicians, pagan businessmen, pagan bankers. Why aren't they turning on them? They're not. But they will turn on their own children to quote-unquote respect them. They will turn on the neighbors. They will turn on young people. They will turn on anyone else except the people that are truly making their lives hard. So they won't stand up against those who are really making their lives hard as a community, but they will turn on you by not giving in to their relief seeking. Believers, I'm not making this video to prove anything. I'm pointing something out to you. Too many worldly teachings believers cling on to. This whole teaching of boundaries is a teaching you need to examine. Is it in line with Christ? If you walk in the power of Christ, and that power is always safe and secure, why do you need those fixed limitations to control others? Why do you need to control others for you to be at ease? That means you're operating in fear. That means you're not relying on God. It is time for believers to stop following the world's teachings without questioning things. You shouldn't follow worldly teachings to begin with. What I see happening is that you have many people that claim to follow Christ, but they don't want to give up their baggage. They don't want to examine, nor even face that they have a baggage. Well, in this channel, I challenge your baggage. Unlearn this whole idea that you have the right to control others when you are uncomfortable. And here's the thing. Just because someone gives in to all your self-afflicted limitations doesn't mean they're safe. If they are safe, they would never give in to your self-afflicting limitations to begin with. And if they do, to please you, they're not the right type of people for you. But what do world people think? Unfortunately, also some believers, they think that when someone gives in to their self-afflicted limitations, that they are respectful people, that they are polite people, and they tend to be comfortable with that. You shouldn't have self-afflicting limitations to begin with, let alone expecting others to give in to those self-afflicting limitations, and absolutely not becoming upset and vengeful when others refuse to give in to your self-afflicted limitations. Why are believers holding on to self-afflicting limitations if they have the power of Christ available to them? Examine yourselves, believers. Examine yourselves. Be at peace.